I'm Cheryl Chumley. This is Bold and Blunt, giving you a Christian conservative view of news, politics, culture, and events. Gal Klev, welcome to Washington, D.C., all the way from Israel.
Yeah.
It's great to have you here.
Great to be here. Very special.
Yeah, so we're standing here in front of the historic U.S. Capitol with the U.S. Ulysses Grant Monument on our other side, and against the backdrop of Israel launching this all-out assault on Gaza City to eradicate Hamas. What is, I know you've been in D.C. and you've been in the United States for a little bit, but what is the tone and tenor of the people back at home? Are they in favor of this all-out assault? Are they frightened? What's going through their minds?
Well, it depends on who you ask. I mean, we're obviously under a very strong PR campaign coming from the left, from Democrats, from Europe and its proxies, telling us just surrender to Hamas. Don't go into Gaza. We have here in the United States, Secretary Hegseth this week is talking about the concept of the warrior. So the European side is saying, like, forget warriors, just, be weak. Israel should be weak and surrender to Hamas and just give them what they want. So you'll have another October 7th, in a few months or in a few years, and we'll have more October 7th in the US and in Europe, and don't worry about it. But I think the Israelis are very clear. We got to eradicate Hamas, and we got to do this. Part of doing this is going into where they are, which is in Gaza City.
So the messaging that has drawn this moral equivalency between the Israeli people and Hamas has been going on for years and years. It didn't really stop until President Donald Trump was inaugurated. The Jewish people, do they look at Donald Trump as sort of an enabler for Benjamin Netanyahu to launch this assault?
Absolutely. I mean, in Israeli, Donald Trump has probably the highest popularity rating and approval rating in Israel. People on the right and on the left, even on the far left. We love President Trump. And because President Trump understands that, when you have a war, you try to win the war. And then you make peace through strength. These are concepts that were very anchored since Israel's beginnings. So just a year ago, we were here and we were in a very different situation. We were accused, units of the military were being sanctioned by the Biden administration. We were told to stop. Then now it's Gaza City. Then it was Rafah. Don't go into Rafah. We were trying to fight, not just for us, but for the United States, Europe, and Western civilization, while people were tying our hands towards the back and tell us, don't be a warrior, go easy, be a DEI type of an army. And we luckily didn't listen to it. A lot of courage out of Prime Minister Netanyahu. We continued trying to fight terrorism, and here's where we are. So the election of President Trump is a game changer, and he enables us to fight to win. And then once we fight to win, President Trump has all new concepts, different concepts for peace. And once we win, then we can win the peace after that under the leadership of President Trump.
So I know the hostages have been a sticking point for a lot of people throwing full support behind an all-out assault, because once you do that, then there is really no incentive for Hamas to return the hostages. Yes. But what's your view of that? Do the hostages stand a chance at this point?
It is a very difficult situation from the beginning, but that's exactly what Hamas identified. Hamas understood it has a few assets in this round of war. One of them is the hostages. He understood that once he takes hostages, then we would want them back, and therefore not fight with the same tenacity and the same, mechanism that we would fight otherwise. But he also understood the connection between the physical assault that's coming from Hamas and from other proxies of Iran and Iran itself, and the ideological assault that's coming from Europe and its proxies. Hamas understood that sooner or later there's going to be pressure on Israel to stop the war. Ceasefire now. We heard the term ceasefire now starting, I think, in the first month of the war. And that's what Hamas wants, to have the global, the world being indoctrinated that Israel is committing war crimes, deliberate starvation, and then we stop, and then they survive, and then we'll have another round, more October 7th. So Hamas manages this very well. So both the situation in the hostages, the humanitarian situation, makes this war, like a war that was never fought before anywhere, and we're managing through it, and we're, as I said, grateful that we have President Trump in the White House and not somebody else.
The PR battle, though, is huge, and it's maybe even more. It takes priority, sometimes more than even the military battle, because if you look at what's taking place in the international media, they always seem to forget that what you alluded to a minute ago, that Israel's war is all of civil society's war,
Yes.
and we should be backing Israel. But if you look at what's going on now, you've got Belgium that just announced they want to recognize a Palestinian state. You have many European leaders who actually feel the same. So how does Israel win this PR battle? It seems insurmountable at times.
It is insurmountable by definition because this is a byproduct of the 2,300-year-old European opposition to Judaism that always evolved based on how Judaism has evolved. In the last century, at the end of the 19th century, there was this conventional wisdom that Europe doesn't want to kill the Jews anymore because they used religious currencies throughout the Middle Ages, and now Europe is secular at the end of the 19th century, and therefore Jew hatred is over, end of history. Theodor Herzl, the visionary of the Jewish state, understood that this is just the way that the European hatred will chase us no matter what form and shape we take. Now the anchor of Judaism, as we spoke in the past, is Zionism. The Jewish state is the most relevant aspect of the Jewish nation religion, and therefore the entirety of that opposition is funneled through us. So we were going to continue seeing this. We were going to continue seeing the Western media and European leaders indoctrinate the population, not just in Europe, but also in the United States, that the Jews, once again, are committing those atrocities now through the Jewish state. So we have to understand it exists. But in conversations I had here, I try to go and talk also to progressive, and also there are people in the Republican side that are appalled, that are very upset naturally about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. My message to them is that if you're saying that there's a humanitarian crisis in Gaza, and there clearly is dire conditions there, then you should be out there supporting the Trump relocation plan, because the Gazans are not going back to Gaza. Right here, Bernie Sanders got on the Senate floor a few months ago and said that 91% of housing in Gaza is demolished. Gaza is a demolition site. The Gazans are not going back. So there's two options. There is the sort of like idea that Macron and Starmer and other Europeans and the Democrats are leading, which is let's keep the Gazans for 20 years in tents, by the water, by the sea, in horrible humanitarian conditions, sort of as a suffering remnant, if you will, and then build Gaza, go through all the explosive tunnels and build Gaza 20, 30 years while they're in their tents, dying of God knows what kind of. There's another way, which is Trump and the American way, to say, let's give those Gazans a better future. Let's offer them the option to leave Gaza. And so my message has been to people who are upset about Israel because of the humanitarian situation. So we can talk endlessly, as you do on your podcast, that it's not Israel's fault, it's Hamas' fault, and we are, we fight, with the most moral army in the world. But fine, there's a situation. If you agree, like Bernie Sanders does, that the progressive do, Europeans do, some Republicans do, that there is a dire humanitarian situation in Gaza, then do something about it. Support the Trump relocation plan, because it's the only way that can provide Gazans with relief and allow them to build a better life.
Just a couple other questions, and then I want to segue into your book, because you raised the issue of Zionism, and that's exactly what your book is about. Yeah. But before we go there, the Washington Post just reported with this significant error where they said that Israel withdrew from Gaza in 2005, 2006, yes, due to a mandate from a peace agreement struck between the Israeli people and Hamas, the Palestinian people. What is the significance of an error like that, and what sort of message does that send people who aren't aware of what really happened?
Sadly, over the last 20 or so years, we have been sending messages of weaknesses. We withdrew from Lebanon, we withdrew from Gaza. Before that, we had the Oslo Accord, which was still something that we haven't come to terms with. Like, we basically, invited our enemy, gave him weapons under with an exchange for a promise that they won't attack us again, and that didn't happen. So this, we were told, well, this is peace. The weakness is peace, and we should make concessions. This is viewed by the Middle East, our reactions over the last 20 years, as a sign of weakness. And I remember in 2005, in Gaza, the world loved us for about a week or a month, until Hamas, within a few years, started tunneling, throwing missiles and rockets at us. We retaliated, and then now all of a sudden we're back to being war criminals, crimes against humanity. The survival of the Jews is defined by many as crimes against humanity, not just now, also in the previous century and throughout the Middle Ages. And we have to kind of come to terms with it. What we have now is really, a clash of civilization between the Europe way of thinking and the American way of thinking. And this is a very appropriate place to discuss this, because the American Revolution and Americanism was not just about people immigrating from Europe at that time and coming here. It was about an exodus from Europe, about emancipation for incarcerating European dogmas, including the idea that you always blame the Jews when things are bad in Europe, and including that whatever things are bad, you got to go to philanthropy and you got to go through, So now again, we were seeing this now. Things are bad in Gaza. Europe says philanthropy. Keep the people in Gaza. Give them more, keep the people in Gaza in horrible humanitarian condition and just give them more philanthropy for the next 20, 30 years. Trump is doing it the American way and says, let's offer them a better way, a better life elsewhere. By the way, if Europe is so concerned about the situation in Gaza, they can take the Gazans in. There are 50 million Muslims in Europe. There are less than 2 million Muslims in Gaza. Even if all of them want to move to Europe and Europe takes them in, that's less of the natural birth rate in 1 year of Muslims in Europe. Meaning the Europeans have the opportunity to solve the Gazan humanitarian crisis in a nanosecond by taking them in. But they don't want to do that. And we know why, because now they've been talking over the last few months about the state of Palestine, as you mentioned. This is a European concept. The state of Palestine has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with Palestinians. And the Europeans are saying that. We are under public pressure. The Western media is telling everybody that that's the thing to do. We should have a state of Palestine. And then the leaders, further indoctrinate their people. So now Europe is on this mad rush to declare a state of Palestine, apparently in the Middle East, even though it backfires. And some people says, well, that state of Palestine should be in Europe. When France is soon going to be 20% Muslim. So, we're in a reality where we have this sort of like vicious cycle where the Europeans are individuals and people around the world, including here in the United States, are incited by the Western media. Weak leaders in Europe are saying, well, the people are mad about Israel, then we're going to throw Israel under the bus and incite them further. And you have leadership from strength that we're seeing here in America from President Trump that says, no, we're going to stand up to that. And, we're going to pursue peace through strength and not through appeasement and trying to placate angry masses.
Right. No more silly two-state solutions that aren't really solutions.
Absolutely.
So, let's just finish up with your book. What brought you to America in the first place? Talk a little bit, first the title, and what you're telling people about Zionism.
Yeah, my book, The Assault on Judaism, the existential threat is coming from the West. I'm showing that we've been in the middle of a very fast-moving attempt to negate the idea of the Jewish state coming from the West, and through it to negate the idea of Judaism. And I'm showing how this is becoming a threat to U.S. national security and to global stability. We're seeing over the last few months the cultivation of new Palestinian ideologies coming out of Europe. There's the Palestinization of everything. While in Israel, people who are Palestinians don't, we just had 30 leaders of Hebron, sheikhs in Hebron, who said, well, we don't even want a Palestinian state. It's a threat to us. We want to join the Abraham Accord as clans. So I'm showing how the threat from the West is the existential threat. Because in every century, you have, different ways to try to destroy us. Sometimes it's through a physical attempt, like we had in the last century, and sometimes it's through an ideological attempt, like we're having now. The main message I'm having in this my conversations here is for people to focus on this threat, because it hasn't happened so far. I've been saying this for the last decade, as you know, in the Judaism 3.0 think tank and in my book. I'm saying that while we have a physical threat from Iran and its proxies, we have an ideological threat coming from Europe and its proxies, and that is the path to destroy Israel and serves also as a proxy to America. And I'm offering frameworks to manage this. We're not going to solve this. This is not, we have to understand, as we said earlier, that the European opposition is going to stay both to Israel and to the United States. Europe has not come to terms with the shift of power to America that occurred last century. And Europe can never come to terms with the idea of the Jewish state, and will continue to oppose it. But I'm offering some conflict management frameworks with Europe, including, as now the president has a everything on the table conversation with Europe, meaning everything is on the table. NATO contribution, trade, Greenland. I'm saying include that, a demand that Europe, completely disengage from anything and everything that has to do with Israel and Palestine.
Gal Klev, I want to thank you so much for coming on Bold and Blunt again. Welcome to America and safe travels home.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, good to see you.